It takes two. I thought one was enough. It's not true. It takes two of you. Just the two of us. It takes two.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to It Takes Two. My name is Simon Miron. I'll be hosting our episode today. We've got with us some wonderful artists for this episode, and I'll ask you to introduce yourselves. Maybe say a little bit about your artistic practice. Why don't we start with Parker?
Hi, I'm Parker Koepnick, pronouns he, they. And I do a little bit of everything. I love movement-based things because that's where I feel the most free in. And I also love writing and poetry.
Wonderful. Thank you, Parker. And why don't we go over to Roland?
I go by he, him. My practice is focusing on object puppetry. Right now, with also having some projection design as a combination of the research. Me and Carmen, we formed Theatre du Poulet in 2016.
Awesome. Thank you. Carmen, do you have anything you want to add?
My name is Carmen Lee, and I go for she, her. For our theater company, every year is changing for our practice based on our interests, I think. Before, we are really focused in puppetry, and then we focus on character masks, like more physical theater. Now, we are more focused on devising on object or different kind of material that we have. For example, for our last production is focused on water as a material to talk about Hong Kong protests in the public space and also with audience participatory. So it's based on our interests through times.
Wonderful. That sounds really cool. Why don't I just get started and I'll come back to Parker. So what led you to apply to this project?
There is a couple of different reasons. I'm always working on some sort of project, and I also really like mentorship as a way of learning and connecting with other artists. And so this just looked like everything that I'm about of, being mentored by someone, and also adding an addition of starting a podcast was also really cool. And I really liked the idea of just taking theater and how do you put it into the digital world as well. And so, yeah, kind of what made me decide on puppetry is I'm currently working on this play that I thought, I feel like it'd be really good to tell this story with puppets and maybe like black light puppetry or something. And my experience with puppetry is not a lot. I've had like some mask workshops and kind of some basic training with that. And so, yeah, I really wanted to dive into kind of what was going on in my brain, which was this project, and to dive deeper into it.
Cool. Thank you. Carmen, what was it like for you to get a random email from a bunch of weirdos in Winnipeg being like, hey, we think you're cool. Do you want to be a part of this project? What was your initial reaction?
Oh, my reaction is so happy and so serious. Like how Parker find us in the Google search engine. Is that my website really well made so somebody can know my theater company? But we Roland and I feel really, really honored and happy to receive Parker's email because we really like to share our experience with other people and collaborate with other people. So I think it is quite perfect for Parker to contact us because we really would like to work with Parker.
Wow, yeah, it's kind of serendipitous. And I guess, that just goes to show you a really good website will go a long way.
Yes.
So, don't downplay your digital investments, people.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Roland, do you want to talk? You kind of mentioned a little bit before about getting started with your theater company. Do you want to kind of elaborate a little bit about your relationship with Carmen and kind of how that's developed and what this new relationship that you're starting to develop with Parker has been like?
Yeah, sure. Me and Carmen formed Theatre du Poulet in 2016. We settled in Canada, in Nova Scotia, Canada in 2015, I would say. While my background is as an actor, so when I start to travel and also settle in Canada, I still want to do theater, and I found that I need a tools that can speak beyond language, which I start to find tools like puppetry, like mass performances, physical theater, and also really shoot this angle. So we start to explore more and more on object puppetry and theater. And then you also ask about like how was our process like with Parker?
I think it's quite interesting the mentorship do it online, but I find it's also work for three of us. I really hope in the future we could see each other face to face.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes for puppetry it's quite hard to work on online. But this is how we work when we are in Amsterdam and Parker in Canada. But yeah, I really want to work with Parker face to face in the future.
Oh, that's wonderful. There have been quite a bit of challenges over the last few years with, restrictions and all of that. So I wonder how, I'll throw it back to Parker, how you've been able to adapt your practice and sort of your own training, your own development as an artist over these last few years to kind of feel like you're continuing to move. We just finished recording your piece, your digital piece, and you were talking before when you introduced yourself about figuring out this digital theater world or digital puppetry and what that meant. Do you feel like you could elaborate on that, or what your experience has been over the last 3 years, kind of having to be forced to sort of work in that vein?
The pandemic was really difficult for me because I find I do better connecting with people in person.
Mm-hmm.
And once a screen is added, I just find it's more difficult for me to concentrate and feel connected. And so it has been a challenge, but I have found what's helped me is just being around people who support me and that I can support, and that we can just kind of be a team together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's helped with, sharing different projects. And especially with this, it was the first time I felt like online, it didn't feel like there was this barrier. There were some points where I just felt like I was in the room with Carmen and Roland. And it was also, there was this exercise we once did where we were passing off this dough to each other. And it felt like we were just passing it, through the screen to me. And it was just a really different experience that I'd never felt before of, over Zoom or over online, you can still feel very connected to the people you're working with. And you can just do so many things with that. And so I think this experience in particular really opened kind of in my brain all the possibilities I can do work electronically. Kind of taking theater into the digital world, it's still something I'm figuring out of, what's the difference, what makes it a theater piece, a film piece. And I think people can kind of discuss that forever. But, if you want it to be theater piece films, you can still call it theater. If you want to call it then a film, it's kind of, to me, it's whatever the person really wants to decide with that. With this piece, it was really interesting kind of having the camera be our way into the project, for Carmen and Roland, and kind of for me seeing their faces. And so it really worked well that, it ended up being filmed, because then we're like, this, would be a great angle for this, or, let's, cut here. And so it was kind of amazing of how perfect everything kind of worked out with that.
Feel like when you have experience working in multiple mediums,
Mm-hmm.
right, you start to understand how to pull out the strengths of each different medium and make those things work to your advantage. It can be a really powerful thing. Roland, did you have any expectations coming into this weird and wacky project? What were your initial thoughts when you were contacted and kind of presented this idea to you? What did you think was going to happen? And do you want to elaborate maybe a little bit about like how you got started and what kind of things you started to do at the beginning of your process in working with Parker?
Definitely is excited. And when asking about the expectation, I don't know. At the time, I just feel, okay, let's do it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm excited for this. We start from some very lovely meaning. Like for sure, introduce ourselves. And also, for the past few years, as Theatre du Poulet, we have some, a database that collecting the materials or companies or website that we like as a reference. And these materials we found very important to share. So we start from that sharing. But yeah, like puppetry or a company that we like all over the world, and a list of videos that we have seen, and then send it with share with Parker, and also asking Parker, from these materials, are there any companies or videos speak to you or connected with you? So in a way, we can know each other more through, even though we are not in the same space.
You find that common touchstone, that kind of common ground.
Yes, exactly.
What was that like for you, Parker, kind of going through this amazing wealth of information that's been gathered by these wonderful artists?
It was so helpful because I find sometimes researching, different puppetry work can be hard, or it's just nice to have a starting point. And the list just blew my mind of just like places from all across the world. And I was just like, whoa, what is this? And just every single thing in that document, it was hard to kind of pick favorites because I was like, oh, I love all of this. And this makes me excited of how big you can make puppetry, how small you can make it, just all of the different mediums you can use, and how there's marionettes. There's just so much puppetry can be, which is something I love about it. And so that list really helped me to see what are some of the possibilities that I could do, and just how much there is out there. And it also helped me then see, I can look at more from this theater company. What are some other stuff they've done? And so, yeah.
Awesome. Carmen, what was the next step in your process after you shared these documents and kind of had your initial chats?
We talk about it, and then I asked Parker, like, what artist or artistic direction you are interested in. And then I also asked Parker, like, what is your project is about? Can you write kind of a brief description or some word or some sentence about your project, or even though research some pictures or images that you also think is related to your project? And because of the time limited, and at the end, I asked Parker to choose maybe 5 moments that Parker's wrote, and then we picked these 5 moments to work on it. And then we also work on choosing what material as puppetry to work on this project. And at the end, like, Parker chose lights to work on it.
What led you to choose lights, Parker?
That is a really great question. So basically, what I did because we had some improv exercises that we would do and a couple different tasks. And so I would just look around the house and see, can I make this into a puppet? And then there was one day I went to IKEA, and just like everywhere I was looking, I kind of like walked over to something like, this could be a puppet. This could just like creating this creature just in the middle of IKEA. And now I'm just like, everything I see, I'm like, I wonder how I can make this alive. And so, yeah, I was just kind of playing in my basement with different objects and with kind of the 5 different scenes we had, creating that story with them. And then I think I just looked over and saw my roommate's Christmas lights kind of in the store. I was like, wait a minute, what if I play around with these? And so then I turned them on and started playing around with them. It was just interesting to see kind of my expectation or my idea of how I thought it would go with the lights became very different from the end product, which was really cool to just kind of let the lights take me somewhere else. I was like, we're going to do this and this and this. And then kind of going into a meeting and then playing around with it more and seeing, this has way more possibilities than I ever could imagine. Let's just follow where the lights lead us.
Cool. You kind of segued perfectly into what I wanted to ask next, which is just talk about discoveries, any kind of poignant discoveries that you might have had over this very short, but, important and wonderful process.
There was so many discoveries. I think for me, there was this moment where we each picked a poem, either we wrote or someone else wrote, and we never told each other what the poem was or the words from the poem. We kind of just moved together, inspired by like either what the poem moves us emotionally or the words or kind of a story with it. And that was just a really just deep moment for me, because we could repeat different parts and how it felt like we were communicating with the lights to each other. And especially it being kind of with a screen, I was just amazed of, with this silent thing, how much connection I felt. And kind of with talking about silent things, I learned so much that puppetry doesn't have to have dialogue, which also helps, with writing a play. I'm like, I actually don't have to have like a written dialogue script if I don't want to. I could just...
You could just do things.
I could just do things.
Wonderful.
Which is so exciting for me. And I think I learned, sometimes I don't want to use my voice. Sometimes I just want to move. Yeah. And that was just so freeing to have that ability to just move, that this creature can communicate, but it doesn't have to be vocally. And then I think what really blew my mind, kind of the biggest discovery, is the idea of using your body as the stage. As soon as Carmen and Roland mentioned that, I was like, what? and it was so helpful. And it's something I think I will just use with so many things in the future, of just how much you can do with your body. And I think sometimes in theater, it's so much, what's your relationship with the floor? What's the relationship? But what is the relationship to you and your body? And when you bring in this, other creature or object, how does that change? Instead of just focusing on, the world outside of your body, what if the puppet is exploring you? And I just loved that. And that was, to me, kind of the biggest mind-blown discovery.
Wonderful. Wow, that's really great. Carmen, do you have any discoveries, any kind of fun, wonderful revelations that you had over this process? I know coming at it as a mentor, it's a slightly different experience, but was there anything new or fresh that you kind of discovered in working with Parker over the last little while?
It's so happy that sometimes we laugh a lot in the meeting, and I find it's really changed my perspective to see the Christmas light when we really dig into this material and working on how many possibilities we can change this Christmas light as a puppet, or how it could move, or how many creatures it could create. And that's one moment I feel like when I suggest Parker, maybe, we could go in the basement and then turn off the lights and try it. And then, wow, it's so beautiful, and it's so much possibility to create so many things without any words. Because as an immigrant in Canada, like our first language is Cantonese. English is also not bad, I have to say. But when we go to theater, sometimes in Canada, we kind of miss out quite a lot of things if it is a very script-based play. Yeah. And sometimes, even though maybe it's a cultural difference, I still remember when I arrived in Canada, my friend asked me like, are you all set? I understand each of the English word, but when it is all come together, are you all set? And I don't understand. So sometimes it make me really frustrated for language. So that's why I really like to work with things without talking. Also, it just provide audience more space to imagine what is happening, or like without talking, like explain that, the light is a creature from the space, and now it is like floating. I don't think it's quite necessary for me to explain so much in the work. So I think it's very fascinating for me when I see Parker move with the light. It's really the Christmas light is alive and changing so many in shapes.
Yeah, I really appreciate those comments. It's a really important thing to think about. You know, we talk about, or at least these days, there's a lot of discussions about trying to eliminate barriers in making places, making our art as accessible as possible. And I think you really raised some really important and interesting ideas in identifying how language can be a significant barrier for certain people. And I'm a bilingual person myself, and at times, you know, you feel kind of caught between these two languages or these two cultures. And it's really fun and refreshing to be able to enjoy storytelling that just eliminates those barriers and somehow still communicates in a really authentic and pertinent way. It's powerful. It's one of the great things about theater that I think I hope we all appreciate and love.
Yes.
Kind of talked about this already a little bit, but is there anything else about the process that you underwent that you want to share? So we talked a bit about the beginning, and we talked about the discoveries. Anything else that we kind of missed out on that you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there should be some context about the basement, because my basement, I have some other roommates as well, is just for storage.
Okay.
If it rains a lot, it gets water in it, and there's this one wall that just has like some marks of graffiti on it, and so it's very shady down there.
Right.
And so it was just really nice that Roland and Carmen kind of just accepted the space of this is the place that can actually be dark in my house, and just made it work. And it was just nice to feel, you know, so real and honest, and to share that space of, okay, I'm turning on the light now, here's the big boiler in the background, or talking, you know, with just the lights and this, you know, probably bad angle of me. It was just nice to, yeah, it felt so real and so open. That was just a really lovely experience to see that art can be anywhere if you make the space for it and accept it. Another big discovery for me that I learned was there was a lot of moments, or kind of the most notes I got was to go slower. And I think that just in our society and in my normal day life, I'm very much like, we gotta go, and then this thing, and then this thing, and then now we're here, and then okay, I'll rest, and then back to this. And it was interesting kind of being forced to take a breath in and stop, because so much would get lost within the character. It was just like zoom, zoom, zoom. Okay, now this. And it was interesting, kind of that challenge of just moving with the piece and being slower, and how much more story that created. It was a reminder for me of just to slow down, and with my art to also just slow down sometimes. Time in puppetry feels so weird, because at first I was like, oh, we're only going to have 3 minutes of something, and then we went through our first run through, and it was like, yeah, that was 8 minutes. I was like, what? eight minutes? How did that go by? Like, this feels like it's going by so fast, but also so slow. And so it's just so interesting how time changes in puppetry, and it still blows my mind. I don't know how it works, but just how much something, just like a story, the time just feels very different than you would in like a normal script, or even in a movement piece.
That's really interesting. I find as a person who does have the great luxury of working on contemporary written plays from time to time, that kind of pace, that snappy drive is something that seems to be so critical for every play all the time. We've got to get the lines on top of each other. Everything's got to drive as quickly as possible. You know, we're trying to cut this like play into make it as short as possible so people come in, see the play, and they can go home. Yeah, that's really interesting, that relationship of time. Roland, do you have anything to comment on that, on your kind of realizations or your relationship with sort of time and presentation as a puppeteer?
I also find like time in puppetry, especially for puppetry, is, as Parker said, is somehow you need to be slow in beginning, I would say, which I also like try to feel in that way. I guess also as a performer, you feel slow, but in a way, it also, you are feeling the audience, their presence with the puppetry and also with the space. And that's why it becomes slow as an outcome. somehow for puppetry, there could be a lot of information happening from the slightly movement, and it could representing something else, and that it brings audience another time to understanding, okay, what it is, what it is, what it is. So in a way, it seems like, oh, the time is very long. I guess which I enjoy at the beginning, I would say I enjoy the way it's like this, like when I'm audience to watching a puppetry show, I quite enjoy the slowness. Like it seems like timelessness. Like, oh, you can be on time, just enjoy the moment in here. And there's something happen, and then another things happen. And then also for something like when speaking to that, I'm also trying to find, okay, what the tempo that can be shifting, because like when everything like it starts from slow, but also there's something spice or something sparkle, it become very surprising for the audience. I feel like throughout Parker's experience, Parker's also find this exciting about, okay, like in general, it's a slow process, but in a way, how we call it a spaceship, but it have different name, spaceship or the pencil bag. So how it moving slowly, but suddenly a little bit, how to say, cracking or what, like shaking something. It changed the dynamic already. So I very enjoyed that, like very subtle moment that happened in puppetry.
It almost sounds like you're describing a piece of music in talking about dynamic range and talking about, slowing, like starting slow and letting that build and finding that relationship with the audience, that feeling that you get when you know that they're with you. There's something really palpable about that and interesting. And I find that a really interesting sort of connection in like time, musicality, tempo, pace, and rhythm. What about you, Carmen? Do you have anything to comment on time and your relationship with time in performance?
For me, I think in daily life, my time is always chop, 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 because I'm a really quick person in mind, and also doing stuff that sometimes I miss out the detail. And that's why maybe I have Roland aside me, because he's much slower than me. So we have a good balance. So I think puppetry is a really good tool also for me to learn to be like living in a slower pace and something like that. And for puppetry, I think sometimes I see it like as when you see the filmmaker making movies, sometimes they will draw their storyboard. So they will break down a character or movement into several parts. Maybe a character walk from point A to point B. It can be like 10 slides of movement. I think it is quite the same in puppetry. And also, we also read a lot of children's book that we are really fascinated in children's book, because sometimes how it creates is also resonate with how we create puppetry in our theater company. It's also break down the character in different small moments.
And the graphic novel.
Children graphic novel that I really always just go to the books store and then just spend maybe 1 hour in there and then flipping all the children books to get ideas, inspiration.
Is there a book or two in particular that you want to give a shout out to that really resonated with you in the past?
There's one it's called The Arrive. Actually, it's really like a filmmaker storyboard. The story around is about people who leave the country and arrive in a new place, and every moment that the person capture in their mind are apple dropping on the floor, or something like the letters, writing the letters, and again writing the letters with tears, and writing a letters with the tears dried, like very like bit by bit by using storyboard to telling a story.
So you've been able to develop this wonderful online relationship. I'm just curious how you envision moving forward after this mentorship. What are your plans for the future? What do you feel like you gained from this, and how would you like to take that moving forward with your work?
Ooh, it was fun with the amount of sessions we had. There was one week that we decided to have this kind of like intensive where we met, I think, 3 times, which was super helpful and really great. It was really interesting kind of going into this kind of knowing Theatre du Poulet and really liking their work, but not knowing kind of the people behind them and kind of trusting I really like this art. I really like this artist statement. I really like what these people are about. I think we'll get along. And kind of after the first meeting, I was like, oh, yeah, this is good. This is just kind of like a breath of fresh air. I feel like I can be safe here. Mm-hmm. And so it's been really nice to kind of create this friendship and be mentored by people who I adore their work so much. And it was also fun to just sometimes we had this one meeting where I kind of just asked them questions about previous work of how did you do that, or from this trailer, is that a potato carved out, and it was just super cool. And so what I see moving forward is Roland and Carmen are people who I can talk to when I need help or have questions about a project, and then we briefly talked about grant writing. And so it's just really nice knowing that there's supports or even just like they're in the room in spirit. And so it's just helpful to have that moving forward.
Wonderful. What about you, Carmen and Roland? How do you feel this relationship has sort of changed or added something to your practice or to how you look at your work moving forward?
I think Parker also gave us a lot of inspiration because sometimes we work a lot within me and Roland. So it is so good to have like Parker, like to see Parker's work, like what Parker's interest in and how he did it. And it is quite amazing. I think our mentorship didn't stop from today. We'll still continue. Like if Parker has any help or any question, we are always welcome Parker to send us email or call us or like reach us in any way that Parker's like to. And I always think because this time we collaborate on like a camera, like technology is so in advance. So I think it's also another stream that we could use as YouTube as sharing for our puppetry work.
And also when talking about the digital platform, I was also thinking, like how we also got inspired on like how we are using digital platform as also a performing platform or performing tools to share with people. In the past, it's only using a camera, let's say like live performance, and then camera like more film or YouTube thing. But also in a way, how we use the digital platform, we could also telling a different story with that, and which I feel like we start to open this door and see what will happen later on.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, I'm glad to hear that all 3 of you were able to find this process rewarding and that, you've been able to do something really special with your time together. We're heading towards close to the end. And I was just curious if you have any other comments or questions or things you wanted to discuss or share.
For me, this experience was a reminder of all the things I love about mentorship and that it's not something that can necessarily be forced. When someone is willing to put in just even a little bit of time to nurture, it's just so helpful and so healing. And I think that there's so much in art that is about community and about friendship and relationships. And I feel like mentorship kind of embraces that. Yeah, I've just been really grateful to have this opportunity of such a just great mentorship. And it's one of the reasons why I just like love the art so much. And it's just so nice to, I find sometimes I feel so lost or so isolated in things. And so it's nice to just have someone that I can ask all the questions to and have someone who I can say, this scares me, or I don't know, like, how do we do this? And to have that just like little gentle push of, okay, let's take this risk. We can do it together. Let's jump together. And that has just been, very exciting, because now I feel just more free of what I can do.
That's wonderful. What does it feel like to hear that? To know that Carmen and Roland, you played a big part in liberating somebody in their process and in helping Parker feel, supported. Mentorship, like Parker said, is so important. I've always felt like it's almost more of a trade than it is anything else, where it's such an important thing to have other people around and to build that sense of community. That's usually when it's at its best.
Even though we're like every time meeting virtually, but I feel very close. It reminds me that like when we settle in Canada, we know like not a lot of people, or like we know people, but we don't really know in deep on partners or friends at the beginning. In a way, at the time, we also feel, we want to have more support, as if we would love to share, which is also something that I try to bear in mind, and hope that this share knowledge, share resources is one of the big thing that I try to put it on my mind and share with the others. I think this experience also letting us to have a fresh eye to see turning ordinary object into something else, into theatrical or into imaginative objects, performances. So, which also inspired me a lot throughout the whole process. I really enjoy like not a one-way thing, but also is a exchanging, sharing, and also get inspired from everyone doing take party.
Awesome.
For me, I don't think us is just one way to give to Parker. I think it's like a give and take. And we also learn a lot from Parker, like how he organized himself, or what is his creativity. He's so good at remember what we said. I remember for the first meeting, I asked him 5 questions, and then he remembered all of them and then answered in sequences in the right order. Because for me, I don't think I will remember. And it also remind myself to be generous, to give whatever we have, or knowledge or something, because I don't think we can hold everything in our mouth. We can't like take it away when we die or something. So I'm really willing to share what we have and what we learned to Parker, and maybe in the future Parker could also share our knowledge to others, so to pass along the way. And I also think mentorship is quite important for me, and I'm finding, because now I'm in a situation that run out of money, so I postponed my master degree. So now every day I went to the library to flip all the books and artists, and then just Google it online, or maybe I could send email to them to ask them for mentorship, for exchange. Sometimes I think maybe it's quite work for me rather than the school fitting me, something that maybe it didn't work for me. So I think mentorship is also another way of learning, which may be quite helpful for artists, I think.
Well, thank you. I feel we're quite on the same page in that vein, and feel pretty lucky that you accepted participating in this wonderful project. And we're so happy to find like-minded individuals who are willing to share their incredible skills and their experiences with other artists, because really that's kind of what we're all about at the Village Conservatory. We're just a very small little organization trying to create positive impact in our community. And so I'll just sign us off by thanking all of you for participating in this wonderful project. And maybe if you want to share any of your social media tags or any place where people can find you, you can say the name of your exceptional website that
it's really
Parker
good.
mentioned for people to come and see. So if they listen to this podcast and like, who is Théâtre Poulet, and that they can look it up and get to know you better. Any upcoming projects that you might want to let people know about?
Our theater company name is Theater de Poulet, so it's French.
I'm doing my master in Amsterdam right now.
We are working on a project about a character mask, but a mask that is not that look like the traditional character mask. Maybe it's more abstract and contemporary, the shape. And it will project something on the mask, and the mask can also tracking with the movement of the actor.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it will be talk about our friends that currently in prison in Hong Kong because of the political situation in 2019. So it's talking about his life in the prison and how we feel about that.
Wow. That sounds like very powerful work. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Parker, where can people find you if they're trying to find you in the wonderful annals of the internet?
Yeah, right now you can find me on Instagram. I have a photography account, Parker Koepnick Photography, or my artist account is cactus.canoe. And those are where you can find any updates about upcoming projects.
Wonderful. Awesome. We'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of It Takes Two. Again, my name is Simon, and we're so grateful that you are listening to this wonderful project, and thank you so much for participating. Take care.
Yeah, thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
It takes two.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of It Takes Two. Guests were Parker Koepnick and the lovely folks at Théâtre du Poulet. Today's host was Simon Miron. For the Vic Digital Studio, I'm Daphne Finlayson, your friendly neighborhood producer and editor. Music for this show is provided by Paul DeGurse, with clips used from Stephen Sondheim's Into the Woods. The Village Conservatory gratefully acknowledges the support of the Canada Council for the Arts in making this podcast possible. For more on this podcast and other offerings from the Vic, visit us at villageconservatory.com or follow us on social media at Village Conservatory. Thank you so much.